Welcome to Your Music is Bad and You Should Feel Bad. As usual, I'm Matt, and with me today is Brooks Rocco, who you may know as part of Flattened Earth, as well as Cryptide, the world's premier surf metal band. And by premier, I mean that they're the best at it. I don't know if others exist or not. I'm not
If there
looking into
if
it.
there are others, they haven't shown themselves.
Exactly. They're cowards and they won't face you. So we went to see Beat, which, as was explained in the previous Beat episode, is a semi-reunion, semi-tribute to 80s King Crimson.
I don't want to say cover band, but they dance around it. Literally, in some cases.
Yeah, it's like half tribute because you got Adrian Belew and Tony Levin, original members from that era anyway. And to fill in, you have Steve Vai on guitar and Danny Carey on drums. They're arguably going to draw audience that the actual 80s King Crimson thing might not. So,
Well, I mean, in the case of Vi, I don't know if there's a ton of, outsider fan base coming in that isn't familiar with King Crimson. It's a really interesting choice, and maybe we can talk about this a little bit later.
Yes.
The choice of these members, where they came from. I find everything about this band to be fascinating. I was actually not even interested in going to see the show at all when it was first announced, because it seemed like who cares?
Right.
Like who cares? But as the date came, as the time came, and you mentioned you were going, I felt a little pang of envy, and I was like, oh wait, this actually might be cool. I should have gotten tickets. I know it's going to be tough. I'm not going to sweat it, but the closer the show got, the more excited I got. And then, of course, when Amanda fell off a cliff, and then an anvil came and really sealed the deal, and the ticket opened up, I was very excited for this show. So I can't wait to talk about it. I'm super stoked. We get to debrief after this amazing show.
Yes, I'm glad it worked out this way too, because I don't think she would have enjoyed the show, and I realized that more and more at the show. She's always down to go to any metal show, but I was like, this is very not metal, and it was as I've titled the episodes, it's the most old dude show I've possibly ever been to. Although
you're not wrong. I mean, when I was waiting at the bar next door for you to find parking, which took forever, by the way. Come on, figure that out, buddy. I was sitting there just kind of looking around thinking, I am the youngest person here. And I don't know if you're watching this on YouTube, I am not young. Not by any objective measure, I am not young, except at the pre-party for the King Crimson tribute Beat show. I felt like a young buck. It was great, actually. It made me feel good.
Yeah, I think you said it was all male pattern baldness and ponytails, and sometimes both.
I mean, the real heads, yes.
Yeah. I mean, it's definitely, like you said, it's very weirdly specific period of King Crimson, and I don't know, I don't know the King Crimson fan base super well, but I wouldn't be surprised if it's less popular, because it's very 80s. A lot of times, early prog bands, when they got to the 80s and they did something a little too 80s, a lot of their fan base got real upset about it. But that's also what I found really interesting about this music. And I actually specifically got into it because this tour was happening. Because I was like, I like Steve Vai. And it was a good excuse to check out some King Crimson without necessarily having to go through the whole catalog. I mean, I know Court of the Crimson King. I listened to that, and in high school played 21st Century Schizoid Man in a little cover band. That was my first introduction to King Crimson, but I never got that deep into the later catalog. And this was a good excuse because it was just 3 albums, very specific period, and there was a tour to go see. Now, the initial New York show, the tickets were, I had already listened to all 3 albums and been like, I'm into this. I like it. I like it way more than I expected to, considering it's like it's not all clean tones, but it's a lot of jazz chorus, sparkly, chorusy tones, and a lot of guitar synth.
Yeah.
And all super fake drums. I ended up, and there's a lot of like spoken word stuff and recorded spoken word stuff. And so with all that, I was like, I don't think I'm going to be that into this, but I'll give it a listen. I ended up liking it a lot, in spite of or because of all of those elements. And then I went to buy tickets, and they were crazy expensive because of the new Ticketmaster sanctioned scalping nonsense where the show sells out instantly and then the prices of tickets double. And so I didn't buy those tickets, but then they announced a second show in Brooklyn, and I immediately jumped on like a pre-sale thing and got tickets to that. So at the last minute, my wife couldn't go and Brooks was available, and we had I remember us talking about this band and project on the bus to my bachelor party, and so it kind of made sense that came full circle that we got to go see them.
Full disclosure, yes. Matt and I know each other.
We know each other
and have partied together.
Most of the people I've had on the podcast. So that was good. And we had really good old dude seats too, because it was like balcony, but with like nothing in front of us. But yes. The balcony railings. That's the old dude version of being on the rail. You're on the balcony rail and you can sit down.
Those seats were as good as it got. We were on Steve Vai's stage right, a little bit on the side, but kind of, had a view of the whole thing right up front. No skullets blocking our view. It was a spectacular evening. Thanks for asking me on that date, Matt.
You're welcome. I'm glad you could make it. So I'm the YouTube version, I'm gonna try to clip in some of the iPhone videos I took.
You could also egregiously steal video from the countless Beat fan cams on YouTube. That was another reason why I was excited to join the show, because leading up to it, once the tour started, remember originally I was a bit ambivalent about the entirety of it. I saw it popping up on my YouTube mentions because YouTube knows I'm a dork. And I threw on I think the first one I saw was that spoiler alert, they closed the night with Red from the album Red, which is not from the 80s trifecta, the 80s triumvirate. That was sort of like a little gift to the fans, I suppose. And I watched it, and it was cool. And that was the moment I was like, oh, I should have got tickets to this. This is going to be kind of a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to see these guys, plus 2 other guys, play this music, maybe for the last time. And again, we can get a little bit more into the set list and the experience of watching these folks play this music a little later. But all of which is to say, there are plenty of videos if you want to pause this video and look for what's out there. Or Matt will splice something in.
I'll splice something in a little bit. Mostly to illustrate some stuff we're going to describe.
Yeah.
So like you said, they played. I think that was the only one that's like not an actual track from that period. The set list was really good. It was an interesting balance. They played literally every song that I could think I would really like to hear them play. Because those 3 albums, there's a bunch of really good standout tracks, and then there's some okay tracks that I don't, whatever. But they played what I would consider like all the hits, and mostly in the second set, which is like Frame by Frame, Mate Kudasai, and then they did some of the crazy. Like they did Lark's Tongues part 3 or whichever part is
part
in
3.
that period. That was really cool. And it was a good blend because they played a bunch of the really catchy, hooky, short songs, and then some of the really long, crazy, weird noise songs and stuff. And that was really good with Vai and Adrian. And I would say, like, there's no band in the world that has ever made as many weird guitar noises on stage at once, because Steve Vai is like known for that on his own, but it turns out so is Adrian Belew, and you put them together and they're just going off on their wang bars like nobody's business.
Well, so I'd like to pause on that if you don't mind. So, choice of Steve Vai to replace the one and only Robert Fripp. I'd love to hear your thoughts on how you think that came about. Perhaps we can look this up. Maybe this story has been told. Let's not quite yet. But he's a famous noisemaker. Fripp is also a famous noisemaker. They're a little different, you know. Mm-hmm. So what's your take on the Steve Vai choice?
Well, I'm pretty sure I know the answer because I watched the entirety of Rick Beato's interview with them, which was a really good one in the way that Rick Beato interviews can be, which is to say that his questions weren't particularly interesting, but then they would just tell an interesting answer regardless, like, what kind of gear are you guys using? You know, or like, what did you think about playing these songs? And it was like, well, and then there's something actually interesting they say in spite of the boringness of his interview questions. But I believe it was Fripp's idea. Because Adrian wanted to play this material. He put this together. Tony Levin was available, I guess, and Fripp was like, "I'm not gonna leave the house." You know, Fripp doesn't do stuff other than make videos with his wife.
He's very prolific. Songs. He put one out this morning. I just did a little research for this whole thing. He's still at it. Him and Toya. Those guys, those energetic elderly peoples.
They're definitely energetic. That's what he does now. But it's also very much one of those things where you're like, oh yeah, this is just so he doesn't have to like go anywhere. This is all he wants to do now at this point in his life, and that's fine.
He might be making more money from it than he ever made in King Crimson.
It's possible. I wonder, are they on YouTube? Where do they actually host?
They're on Toya's YouTube channel. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but they've been doing it. I don't know how many subscribers she has, but they've been doing it since the pandemic at least.
Oh, I didn't even realize it'd been that long.
Yes, and it is a regular event. I guess today is Sunday, so it would make sense. They do like a Sunday brunch, but I think that they put out more than just one video a week, and some of them are pretty impressive production with their, like, they'll play a cover song and then have themed costumes. They might even have a special guest come into their kitchen and they're dancing around, and it's become like a brand unto itself. Toya and Robert's Sunday brunch or something like that. And I think it's close to a full-time job as they were ever expecting it to be, I'm sure.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised then if they have a decent following.
Yeah.
So I believe he suggested Steve Vai, which I didn't expect that, but I guess it kind of makes sense if you're like considered one of the best guitar players by anyone who's heard of you. Who's the other guy who's considered one of the best guitar players by anyone who's heard of him? And it's probably Steve Vai.
I am a little bit amused imagining, Robert Fripp offering Steve Vai as his replacement. It's kind of like, hey, you know who would be a great replacement for me? The best guitar player in the world.
Yes.
I agree.
Right. It's like, who do you think could play? Like, how about this guy?
Maybe the greatest to ever live might stand in for me and do a reasonable facsimile of me.
Yeah, you were saying it's like casting your own biopic
Yeah.
and being like, how about Brad Pitt plays me, or like Tom Cruise? Is
Yeah.
Tom Cruise available? Because I think he might be a good fit.
I feel like he would be a good me.
Yeah.
Well, you know what? Looks like
Shit, don't play it.
Vi was available. You know,
And I don't know if there was more to Danny Carey. Oh, I know. They said that Danny Carey was a fan of the material of King Crimson, and I think he somehow met Adrian Belew at a show or something.
well, I've got a little background there. So the first time I saw King Crimson was when I was living in San Francisco, and I saw King Crimson at the Warfield. And I believe this was on the Power to Believe tour. So this would have been, gosh, I don't know, 2006, something like that. And opening, I actually saw them twice on that tour. I saw them at the front of that tour and at the end of the tour. I love Power to Believe, by the way. I might be the biggest fan of that album of any person I've ever spoken to, because nobody ever speaks about that album. It's almost as if it never existed, even though it was the last full original King Crimson record. To this day, they still haven't put out a full-length original. And it's a great record, and it's very metal, actually. It came out, I believe, it was inspired by when King Crimson opened for Tool in the early 2000s. Tool, being a massive, huge, international galactic rock star band, were fortunate enough to be able to take out King Crimson as an opening act. And say what you will about Tool, great, objectively a very, very, very good band. One thing I really respect about them is that they often take out interesting bands as openers, not just, whoever's the hot up and coming act or whatever. They'll be a little bit considerate about it. And they took out King Crimson. And I believe they took out Meshuggah and King Crimson.
Oh, wow.
I don't know if it was the same tour, but it was around the same era. And I believe I heard a story that Maynard, when Tool took the stage, would sometimes say to the crowd, if you arrived late and missed King Crimson, you should have to pay twice. Because what an honor, what an incredible thing to be able to do, to take out your heroes, your icons, as an opening act, and purely as a function of popularity. Clearly, King Crimson wouldn't be taking out Tool. Yeah. So when I first saw King Crimson on that Power to Believe tour, which again, I think the album was kind of inspired by playing for a metal crowd. I think they kind of like geared music to be kind of heavy and cacophonous like that. They took out Danny Carey's King Crimson cover band. Now, we can debate about whether or not Beat is a cover band. This absolutely was a cover band. Gosh, what were they called? I can't remember. Maybe I can look it up real quick. It's really hard to search for because typing Danny Carey King Crimson is now like a tainted search.
Yeah, I bet.
You know what I mean? It's like...
Which also, that's a good point related to Beat is not a good SEO choice. Like people, which is okay because everyone going to it knew what they were going to. Even though I just got into it, I still knew what it was and like learned about it. But it's kind of funny too because when they originally made these albums, it was originally going to be a different project with Robert Fripp and Adrian Belew, and Tony Levin, Bill Bruford, but it wasn't originally going to be King Crimson. It was going to be called Discipline.
Right.
And then the story is that Adrian, I think it was Adrian, went somewhere and they were like, oh, what band are you in? He was checking into a hotel, I think. And they're like, what band? And he's like, Discipline. And then he realized like in America that has connotations, but then they ended up calling this version of it Beat.
So you mean like BDSM connotations? Is that what you're getting at here?
I think so. Yeah. Like Discipline. So like, oh, what kind of band is it? Like, and I'm like, but is Beat better, arguably worse.
It also has BDSM connotations, indeed.
And even maybe worse connotations. So it's really funny that they ended up going with that.
Yeah.
They could have called it Three of a Perfect Pair. That would have especially made it been funny because there's four of them. I don't know. I feel like
that's a lot of letters to put up on a marquee. Maybe just as far as efficiency goes, it's just four letters. They get in, they get out. It could be anything too. It could be dance music. It could be hip hop. It could be disco.
It would probably be great branding in the 80s or 90s, like beat. Oh, it's simple, catchy, it's memorable. Yeah. You know how to spell it. But now it's like SEO purposes, it's like you're going to get like a bunch of like beat making sites or something. Like just go to Google and type in beat.
Yeah, or BDSM. There you go. It's come full circle. So they avoided discipline. And they went with beat. Great job. Robert Fripp is already regretting his involvement. What a disaster. I mean, look, I think that it's really interesting that they got the band back together. The other thing that I find fascinating about this all is that Adrian Belew and Tony Levin are getting up there in age. They are no spring chickens. I mean, I had to look this up afterwards because I knew Adrian was, a little old. I didn't know how old. And dude is in his like early mid 70s. And this music is not easy to play. This is some challenging stuff. I, as the youngest person at the bar before this show, I don't think I would be able to play this music night after night.
Yeah. Plus, his vocals are very good considering as well. 'Cause there's some challenging stuff for sure. You told me that. Like, I didn't know how old he was, and then I was like, wow, that's even more impressive. Tony Levin, like, I would believe it because he's just kind of looked the same age for like 30 years.
That's actually one great feature of being bald is you don't visibly age until you really, really do.
Yeah. So other notable things about the show. First thing I noticed was that Steve Vai in the first half came out in a zoot suit. This is where my visual aids will be handy. I don't know. Like, my theory is he just had that zoot suit already, but couldn't quite bring himself to wear it on his own tour. And so then this tour came around and he was like, it would be cool for this tour. And then he just showed up with it on tour and they're like, what is this outfit, Steve? And he's like, what? Zoot suit. And they're like, they can't tell Steve Vai to go home or wear something else.
Well, Steve has a costume closet that is only rivaled by his silly guitar collection, which you can see behind me, by the way.
I was going to say, do you know that because you're in his home right now? And you're like, it's right over there. I just was rifling through his closet.
Steve was very gracious in allowing me to record this podcast in his home studio. He just told me not to touch anything.
Right. No, I just assume this episode's going to end when you're like, oh shit, he's back. Didn't make a run for it.
Yeah, let me just grab this thing real quick. This massive beast of a thing. I mean, look, I think if you've ever seen Steve Vai live, the man does put on a show. He does do costume changes. Absolutely. He does wear silly hats, and that was on full display. I mean, that said, Fripp has become a bit of a costume freak. If you'll watch his Sunday brunch guitar chats with his wife, they get a little silly too. So it does seem that like almost nobody here is taking this stuff too seriously, other than maybe Danny Carey, who I think is really just like kind of living out one of his childhood dreams of de facto being in King Crimson. So this whole thing has been really sort of an homage to an era of King Crimson that was largely, I don't want to say it was ignored at the time, but I think history has proven, or at least kind of acknowledged, at how influential those King Crimson records were. If you look at their association with like the Talking Heads and Brian Eno and Peter Gabriel and the whole era of the whole 80s shift of 70s prog excess, being distilled into a more primal, dancey, African tribal influenced, Paul Simon was doing it. Talking Heads obviously were pulling a lot from Fela Kuti and other sort of rhythmic minimalists, while also experimenting with the incredible technology that was available during that era. So King Crimson kind of in the 80s, I always used to like to joke that if you listen to the latest King Crimson record, and this was a long time ago that I used to say this because there hasn't been a latest King Crimson record in a long time. But if you want to know like where music is kind of headed 10 years in the future, if you kind of go back to King Crimson's discography, they've always kind of been ahead of the curve because I think they were always quick to embrace the music making technology that was available at the time and then take it to its sonic extreme, less so in the textural way that like a Pink Floyd might play with sounds or, electronic synthesizer artists might play with textures and sounds, but in the technical skill domain along with that technology. So it's kind of like the extreme of sonic possibility combined with the extreme of like physical musicality. King Crimson was always kind of there and would also, I don't think all of their music is incredibly melodic, so they weren't afraid to take technical chances at the expense of melody. But during the 80s especially, they always kept the groove. I think there's a few, polyrhythmic 80s King Crimson songs in that collection, but for the most part, it's very hypnotic, right? And there's and I think go ahead. And that wasn't always true in the 70s. So I think the biggest changes between the 80s Crimson and the 70s Crimson musically is the drift towards 4/4 hypnotic rhythmic groove, and that experiment with the 80s synthesizers that were not available in the 70s, along with some really interesting drum choices, which I would love to talk about at some point too.
Yes. We'll talk about that next. To what you just said. Yeah, there's like you said, like there's the guitar synths. They both Robert Fripp and Adrian Belew both were using the Roland Jazz Chorus amps in this band originally, and then in this version they copied that, but then had some supplementary stuff. But that gave it a very distinct sound because those are especially clean amps, and I think one of the first amps with like a chorus in it. And I remember hearing there was an issue where in the studio they had to record one of them without the chorus because it was hard to get the modulation to match. So they had to like add the chorus to one of them after like it was recorded or something like that. But it makes a very unique sound, and then. Similar to that with the drums, and I believe this is one of the reasons Bill Bruford ended up getting sick of the project, was that one, I believe Fripp insisted no cymbals, and two, it was mostly or all electronic drums. So there's a lot of interesting, very fake drum sounds, and I thought it was very interesting to hear Danny Carey, who, Tool has some, I don't know if they have some like triggered sounds here and there too, but generally you think of Tool as like most prog rock or metal bands as having a kit, a real drum kit, a big drum kit, but in a sense traditional in that they're acoustic drums. And it was interesting to see Danny Carey playing all wacky, super fake sounding drum sound. It was cool. It was really cool. And that's one of the reasons I like this material too. It's cool to hear a really great drummer do a bunch of, it's kind of like the 80s Rush, where Neil Peart was one of the few people who was like that same kind of drummer, but he embraced getting those crazy 80s sounds into the mix. And a lot of people hated it, but I don't. I like it. And so similarly, Bill Bruford, Danny Carey doing these crazy, and stuff, and you're like, it's different, it's interesting, and very 80s. And then the other point, like you were saying, is they did keep a lot of the songs straightforward enough, and also they had really good, I think because of Adrian mostly, they had really good choruses and vocal melodies too. So like you can really get into like Frame by Frame, Man with an Open Heart. A bunch of the ones they played at the show is just like straight up recognizable songs. They just also have some weird, weird guitar noises thrown in too, and sometimes, like you said, the polymeters where they'll do the phasing thing. One will go out of time and the other will stay on 4/4 and that kind of stuff a lot. But it's very listenable. It was easy for me to get into, and I liked it a lot.
Yeah. I totally agree. I think that it's probably the easiest entry point to King Crimson to anyone that's never really dived into their really impressive and quite frankly majestic discography. The highs of the King Crimson collection of releases are some of the most impressive moments, I think, in rock music history. I always tell people that there are 4 essential King Crimson albums. There's In the Court of the Crimson King, which took the world by storm. I think Jimi Hendrix famously said after seeing King Crimson that they were the best band in the world. Fripp will tell that story at a moment's notice that Hendrix saw them play in London, and after the show shook his hand and said, "You're the best band in the world." I would tell that story a lot too if I had, if I had that story to tell. And then Red, which is the goodbye record of the 70s era, was supposed to be the farewell of the entire band until Adrian and Robert met at a party, I believe, to have the discussion about reforming. Discipline is, the first of the 80s records. And if you notice, they focused on Discipline exclusively in the second half of the show.
Yes. And I think I would say Discipline is the strongest overall of those records, easiest to get into like top to bottom.
Yeah.
And then probably Beat's probably the weakest, and then Three of a Perfect Pair has a lot of good stuff.
And then just to close it out, as I mentioned earlier, am a big fan of The Power to Believe. I think that they knocked that one out of the park. And I think it's the most underrated of all the King Crimson records, simply for the fact that it's barely rated at all. So if you're listening to this podcast and you have an interest in heavy music, and I assume you do, because that's typically the focus of this this series, is check out The Power to Believe. It is heavy, boy. But it also has a lot of the trademark King Crimson interplay between left and right guitar, Adrian Belew and Robert Fripp going back and forth, doing that kind of stuff. If that annoyed you just now, what I just sang, you don't even like King Crimson. Why are you even listening to this? Because that is the band. It's that's it.
Exactly.
That's the whole band. Just done well. So yeah. Power to Believe, very heavy, very cool, very legal. Check it out.
I myself need to give that a listen. And in general, I'm going to do a deeper dive into the rest of King Crimson. Like I said, I know the 80s albums now, and I already knew In the Court of the Crimson King. And I've heard a few of the other like super standout tracks like Starless and Lark's Tongues, whichever part is... but I need to just go through the rest of it. And now that I've done the 80s stuff, it's not as daunting, because I was saving them for like a midlife crisis. I was like, okay, I know this is a prog band I haven't got deep into, but I know they're good.
Yes.
Because they're considered the best. And like In the Court of the Crimson King, I think is generally considered like the first prog rock album, like by a lot of people, like that's really what set the standard. And I know that other stuff came out the same year. It was like 69, right? So there's other, I don't know if like Yes is maybe arguable, but I don't know the timeline. But it makes sense to me musically that that's like, there's prog rock, and then you can kind of go off from there. I'll do it. In fact, maybe you can, do some more podcast episodes if you want as I discuss them, because that's the whole point of the podcast is it forces me to listen to things and then, like write down my thoughts, and but also I need more things that I disliked on the podcast.
Look,
We've been too many episodes where we like the stuff we're talking about.
I can make you a list. I think Court of the Crimson King is generally considered the first major album to claim the title of prog rock. I mean, just think about the big opening of 21st Schizoid Man. It's basically an arrival of a new sound. There was a Moody Blues record called Days of Future Past that some people consider to be the first prog rock record. And then there's a few other bands. There's like Jethro Tull, Zappa with the Mothers of Invention. There's a few around that era. And as Brian Eno often talks about is this idea of the scenius. Have you ever heard of this? The idea is that genius rarely occurs in a vacuum, right? It's, it's very rarely like one person in their study hammering out a new piece of art that the world has never seen before and just hitting the world with it. Usually new sounds, especially, are a result of a culture or a local scene where lots of bands will be experimenting with a new flavor, a new genre, and one perhaps will emerge as the ultimate version of that. But this kind of stuff rarely occurs in a vacuum. So, wants to call it the scenius, right? It's like a scene where a genius will emerge. So even
that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, even like you listen to like Radiohead's first album, it's very good, but it's very much like a 90s rock album of that era, right? It wasn't until they sort of like broke out of a scene where a lot of people were making that kind of sound and eventually found their own thing, of course. But I think that like, to label anything the first version of something often will discount like the myriad other experimenters or people who didn't quite break out, but also contributed to the atmosphere or vibe that had to exist in order for one genius moment to emerge.
Yeah, certainly. And like I would say, like you said, the Moody Blues one, like it's probably like, because then there's also like proto, like there's stuff that's like not quite that thing yet, but basically teed it all up.
The ingredients were kind of there.
Yeah,
right?
There's always that kind of, and like you said, Zappa. I mean, Zappa. If like at some point someone asked Zappa if he was prog rock, and he was like, sometimes. And then they were like, "Are you blah 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 blah?" And he's like, "Are you jazz?" Sometimes. And then like there was a whole thing where people asked him if he thought other bands were progressive rock, and almost every one of them he was like, sometimes, because it was like, but sometimes they play stuff that's not progressive. And it was like, that's true. Even like, again, that before prog became prog with a capital P and not exactly progressive. And it's kind of like how like yacht rock artists, not every track is yacht rock, because that wasn't a thing then, And so like prog as we see it now, it was just taking shape. And so not every song was going to have the hallmarks. But like, as you said, like, 21st century Schizoid Man has some like pure blueprint in it. Like there's those like 5/4 like that's just
And if like, you also, if I remember correctly, if you open up like the vinyl copy of 21st Century Schizoid Man. And I only say that because it has like extended liner notes. And, you go into Spotify now, you type Crimson and the first track is 21st Century Schizoid Man. And then it's track 2 and track 3. But I believe if you look at like the original record liner notes, even 21st Schizoid Man has like 5 parts, and they're all named in like an obnoxious way, right?
Yeah.
Like The Gathering. It's so annoying, but it's also the kind of thing that they did in that era, because if you remember, or if you don't, because we're not that old, but back in the 60s when this came out, they were all kind of like art kids.
Yeah.
They were all and they were trying to like capture the like Shakespearean like extravagance of a play, right?
Right.
Of a high class British experience.
It was all like rock and roll is art now.
Yes.
And how high can we elevate it? Like we mixed it with classical and jazz and like I was talking with Blake on we reviewed the new Opeth, which I don't know if you've heard it, if you checked it out. It's like a concept album about a will. Well, it's called Last Will and Testament, and except for the last song, every song is just named a number and this like S symbol. I don't know what's called. It's S symbol that's supposed to mean like a paragraph in like a will.
Yep.
And we were like, I actually would have preferred like pretentious subtitles in addition, because it's like more pretentious to just be like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then the last one has a title. And but again, I can't really complain, because again, sometimes I like that to a certain degree. Like, well, I was saying maybe it was because like the counterexample to that is A Pleasant Shade of Grey, where it's all just part 1 through 12 or 13 or whatever.
Yeah.
But it's because it's supposed to be one song, but then there's obviously sections. And I still don't like that, because I can't remember which number is which. And I'll be like, you know what track's really cool? It's either 4 or 5. I'm not sure, but it's on there. It got out of hand, and like newer bands, a lot of the time when they do it, and they're like, here's their 6 sections, blah, blah, blah. And I listen to it, I'm like, I can't even hear that there's sections, you idiots. Like, what are you, just a bunch of riffs. You just get out of here. But then back in the day, like Yes and Rush and King Crimson, when they did that, you could listen to it and you'd be like, and here's this section, and here's the next section. Like there was a reason for it. Just like if you were like in a classical piece, when they would do that, they do that too in classical music. Sometimes they'd be like, here are the movements, and this is when, you know, Zeus is murdering Ares or some crap, whatever, you know, like some mythology, and or literally take a classic poem and like set it to music or something like that, you know. So
I'm glad that you mentioned that it got too far, because one thing I think we have to note when talking about King Crimson, but prog in general, is that it got really annoying. And it kind of annoyed music so much that punk rock had to happen to tell it to shut the fuck up. Punk rock was a...
What year did punk start, though? Wasn't it already happening, like, in parallel? I feel like they were just opposite parallel tracks.
They were parallel tracks, but punk was very much a response to the pomposity of the excess of the progressive side of rock and roll. When Pink Floyd and the Rolling Stones and even the Beatles started getting very experimental and bringing on, you know, orchestras and choirs and mellotrons and synthesizers and floating pigs in the arenas, and King Crimson type music, putting out 11-part, you know, prog epics and stuff. I'm sure punk rock historians will claim otherwise, and I'm sure there were lots of reasons why punk emerged, but one of which was very much a rebellion against the extravagance of that side of the music world. And I don't think it's impossible to love punk music and love extravagant progressive music as well. And I think that in a way, the reason why King Crimson reformed was because there was this idea around new wave punk, which kind of took the stripped down nature of rhythmic music, and, you know, it was like a stripped down DIY dance aesthetic that would be at home in CBGBs in New York as the Ramones would. And that's kind of where the Talking Heads sort of emerged, where they didn't sort of emerge, they did emerge out of that area of New York. I don't think that their music was as technically virtuosic as King Crimson, but they lived, if not in the same house, they were neighbors, because Adrian Belew, as you know, came out of Zappa and Talking Heads University, and you could probably even consider him the bridge between the new wave punk scene and King Crimson, and prog rock. So I mean, I think that the beat, in hindsight, or the King Crimson era in hindsight, probably influenced modern music, and certainly that scene of new wave punk, of 80s prog rock, and even electronic music moving forward in incredibly significant ways that we can kind of only admire now. Famously, King Crimson is often described as your favorite musician's favorite musician, or your favorite band's favorite band, right?
Yeah.
Normies are not typically King Crimson fans, but people who play in normie bands often are King Crimson fans.
And they never really had like a crossover moment. They were just like firmly in that category. Although now, so I was going to say, relative to what you were saying also about you can now enjoy both punk and prog, and that's okay. I would argue one of the coolest things about the current era of music, and arguably the best thing you can do, is to appreciate things that used to be considered like opposite, right? To kind of appreciate both sides of the fence. Like there was a period where I go in and out of Zappa phases, but I was realizing at one point how with, I think maybe it was Be In My Video, a lot of that is making fun of David Bowie. And I was like, but I also like David Bowie, and there's direct references in there about the Serious Moonlight, because that was the name of the tour he did. And so I could see how Zappa thought he was kind of ridiculous. But then also in a lot of ways they're doing some similar things at times. Just obviously Bowie never got as crazy with it, but there were weird little overlaps. And I was like, and I can appreciate both. And it's kind of like how my main obsessions are metal and yacht rock, and I'm trying to cram those things together. But at the time, people would be like, "This is the metal, more metal side would be wouldn't like the smoothness of yacht rock, and then the yacht side wouldn't like the metal is not smooth." But then there's already, if you do dig deep enough, kind of like you were saying with the existing connection between Talking Heads, Zappa, King Crimson, there are actually always more connecting factors than you realize. Yeah. Like how early Dream Theater is super influenced by Toto, and people don't really want to talk about that or certainly admit it anymore. Even though arguably the stuff that they lost as they went on, a lot of the best stuff they lost that they can't really recapture, I think, is the Toto elements. If they just go back and listen to more Toto again, then I think maybe they could come up with one more good idea.
Yeah. I think that it's really fascinating the way that a long time ago, before the streaming era, perhaps, people's identity used to be very much wrapped up in the kind of music that they listen to. Not that it still isn't. It still very much is. But I think that because we're in this streaming world where everything is available, that has allowed any person who might otherwise never in a million years listen to Steely Dan, just throw it on because it costs absolutely nothing to do so, and perhaps give it a chance. Find out that it's interesting, and you don't have to be a hater. But a long time ago, it's very hard to be a punk and a prog dude because they were at war with each other. Yeah. And if you were a metalhead, you had to hate pop music. If you loved this band, that meant you had to hate that band. And your identity was wrapped up in it. Your group and friends were wrapped up in it. It was the Sharks versus the Jets. It was the punks versus the metalheads. It was, you know what I'm saying?
Even the punks and the rockers, like the Who's Quadrophenia. There's this the background to it is that those were the punks and the rockers were fighting, but the punks were actually the ones listening to rock. The rockers, it meant a different kind of rock, maybe outdated earlier rock and roll or something. Like I was always found it confusing because it was like, or sorry, the Mods and the Rockers. That was the two groups, but the Mods was like proto punk and ironically rock, because the Who, that's where Pete Townsend came from. He was a mod, and then he basically was one of the biggest rock bands of his era. And so
Betrayal. How dare he?
Yeah, but it's because also they meant different things then. It was very, but it was when I first found out about this, I was like, wait, he wasn't Mods and Rockers. What the fuck are the Rockers then? Like, if the Mods are listening to rock, I don't know. But that was kind of it doesn't make sense. It kind of goes back and forth. And
well, it also makes sense in the sense that, like, let's say a record was $20, even adjusting for inflation. I think when I bought CDs, the last time I was big into CDs, they were like $20. Even growing up, I think CDs were like $20, which now is like deep, a CD.
It was an investment if you really wanted to, like, so you had to pick something. You couldn't just listen to everything.
Exactly.
You're super rich.
And there's a tendency to not want to consider your investment to be a bad investment. So you can do that either by lying to yourself and telling yourself a bad album is good, even though sometimes things are so bad, you're just like, all right, that was a waste of $20. Or the other way you could do it is by saying, I bought this genre of music. That means that genre is bad, and I align with this genre of music, even if they are so closely related. Punks versus metalheads was a thing in the 80s. And now it's like these two styles of music could not be more similar, and no metalhead hates punks. No, unless they, really, unless they murdered each other's friends. So all of which is to say that, like, the fact that there is this Adrian Belew link between, like, 70s progressive Zappa dumb, 80s new wave punk, and then, well into the weird Adrian Belew 90s, by the way. Post King Crimson, Adrian Belew's his solo albums are very strange, almost childlike. Anyway, we're jumping all around here.
I was gonna say, I know you can't go too long.
Yeah.
I think, okay, what else do we, so the show was really good. We both liked it a lot. Happy with the set list. Sounded good. They made a lot of weird guitar noises.
Yep.
And Danny Carey played a lot of really fake sounding drums.
I just want to point out that there was a moment that I got a little emotional when I realized that this, Tony Levin is 78 years old. Mm-hmm. The man is up there, and as is Adrian Belew. Steve Vai and Danny Carey are not young men anymore. This is one of those last hurrahs, unless they want to do this again next year. But I can't imagine these guys are going to be playing this demanding music into their 80s. So, even if Adrian is killing it, and again, completely blown away, I could not do what he's doing up there. Certainly not while singing at the same time. It's incredibly impressive. This is just one of those reminders to me that if you have musical heroes that you grew up with, that you've never seen before, go see them. Go see them.
Absolutely.
These guys are not going to be around forever. And when they're gone, you're going to regret having not bitten the bullet, dealing with the Ticketmaster fees if you have to, finding parking as much as that sucks. Matt, I know it was basically your personal Vietnam.
It wasn't that bad. It took about as long as it did to park to walk from the parking spot. That was the real, it took a while.
Yeah.
But the original version of this King Crimson, I guess they didn't tour that much. And then the period ended kind of quickly. So it was a lot of people who never had a chance to see this stuff before. And then B, like you're saying, like before it's too late, kind of. And I think that was the whole thing. Adrian wanted to revisit this material and get some of these songs played while he still could.
Yeah.
And you're absolutely right. Like, I did not it really never occurred. Like, so, Rush, I saw Rush a bajillion times, and I saw them their last tour, Madison Square Garden. And there was I used to just go see them every tour. There was a few years where I didn't, but I never regret going to a Rush show. And it never really occurred to me, like at some point they would stop, and then they did. And then I was like seeing people being like, who liked Rush but had never gone to see them, and I was like, what is wrong with you? You have failed yourself for your entire life. Like you can't see them now. That's it. Like they broke up.
Yeah.
They stopped, and then Neil died, and that's it. There's no more Rush. It's over. And I was like, holy crap. It's like, if you like Meshuggah, hurry the fuck up and go see Meshuggah, because there was already talk of like not playing Bleed anymore because it's murder on Thomas's body.
Poor calves.
And those guys,
poor calf muscles.
They're getting, relative to not as much as those old King Crimson dudes, but like they're probably like close to like Vai's age. I don't know, but they've been around a while. It's demanding music. Some people whose music isn't as demanding can keep cranking away. But even then, something starts to give. Like you could hear some dudes who are amazing, like they start to lose vocal range, or all kinds of stuff can happen. So like, get it while the getting's good. And there's only a few people I regret not seeing. Usually just while they had a better lineup. I don't think there's anyone who I could have seen that I didn't see at all. But like, I saw Queensryche a bunch of times, but after Chris DeGarmo left, and I didn't see Steely Dan until after Walter Becker died, which is a bummer because I could have. I was just like, should I go? Maybe next year. Like every year they played a week at the Beacon Theater, and I kept just like, maybe next time. Maybe and I should have gone like every year. When I finally went, I was like, I should have gone to this every single year.
Yep.
What is wrong with me? And I don't know. So yes, good message. Go see bands you like.
But it's a bigger message too, because just in general in life, folks, and let's leave you with this. Maybe this is the discipline you all need. Is if you're deciding whether or not to do something, whether it's to go see Neil Young on his last tour, whether it's to go see Beat. Well, you can't do that anymore because that's over. Just think about 5 or 10 years from now if you're going to regret having not done the thing. Regret not having gotten off the couch to go see your favorite artist before they walk off a cliff and get hit in the head with an anvil, like Amanda did. Literally. I'm so sorry, by the way. My condolences. The Acme Corporation was really on one that day, and I'm glad I got that ticket. So thanks to Amanda wherever you are.
Yes, and. Before we wrap it up, that was a good note to leave us on. We're trying to focus on Blue Sky for our social media interactions. I'm on Blue Sky at the One True Matt. Brooks, if you want people to talk to you on Blue Sky?
Oh my gosh! If you'd like to find me on Blue Sky, you can write my name, Brooks Rocco. .bsky.social.
That's it. Yeah. I don't know. Yeah, that
something
part's
like
a given. But because it seems like so many people went over from Twitter after the election.
Yep.
And I got my followers quadrupled, maybe more, because somebody put me on a metal Twitter starter pack. And so I was like, well, that's a good place to, and most of those people probably didn't even follow me on Twitter. So I'm like, let's start posting new podcasts about metal and whatnot and see if some folks are interested. So
if there's a prog pack out there, I would be embarrassed to be on it, but I'm open. But I'm open to it. I'm open to it.
the people whose focus is prog, like it has not become an attractive scene. Even among nerds, I feel like it's not like people who are into metal and some of it is prog, and like that's one thing, and I see a lot of that. But maybe it's just me and the circles I'm involved with online, and that I no longer as like in the prog spaces. But I don't know. I guess when it all just became Dream Theater and bands that sound like Dream Theater and Devin Townsend and yeah. So.
I have lots of love for my prog brothers and sisters. I am you. We are you. We are one in our 20 minute epic future here. I love progressive music. I agree though. You're right. There was an era where prog was just synonymous with Dream Theater and every Dream Theater ankle biter on planet Earth. And the only thing worse than Dream Theater is a band trying to sound like Dream Theater. But I am glad that there is, I think there is some pretty impressive progressive music. Obviously, Blood Incantation is one of the biggest metal bands in the world, and they have no qualms about embracing the world of prog. I think there's a lot of King Crimson styling on their latest record. They obviously brought in the dudes from Tangerine Dream on their latest record. That is phenomenal. So I think that there is a prog revival waiting to happen. And I tell you what, if anybody left the Beat Show inspired to make progressive music, well, I'm sorry, you're in your mid 60s if you were at that show, so it might be too late for you. But maybe conversations around King Crimson might inspire folks to give progressive music.
If your dad went to that show, there might be a chance for you.
And if your dad went to that show, didn't invite you, and your mission is to impress him and win his approval, and if that means starting a prog rock band, I can't wait to hear it.
Yeah, I think what it needs is people need to focus on the progressive element, because when it's like even Blood Incantation, I could say like it's really a combination of, like you said, prog, death metal, obviously old school death metal, and then like you said, if they add something like Tangerine Dream, kind of. Those are separate things that, when combined, arguably can create a somewhat new thing. And
I'll tell you what. Here's the thing. Like, prog eats itself, and when mentioning that like Dream Theater, emulators are the most unlistenable, style of metal in the world. Yes. That is because they are trying to do what Dream Theater did. And if you want to look at the word progressive, it means to progress, to try new things, to create sounds you've never heard before. And maybe, if there's anything we can learn from King Crimson, it's that they never repeated themselves. They were always trying new things. It didn't always work. There were lots of King Crimson records in the 70s that are very forgettable because they didn't hit. They just didn't hit. But if you listen to it, you can hear what they're trying to do. It just didn't take the world by storm. But they kept on trying, and they kept on doing new things. And the 80s records, nothing sounded like that. A lot sounded like that afterwards. The people that tried to take what King Crimson experimented with and innovated with, and then incorporated that into their own music, for sure. You can hear King Crimson influence in all kinds of pop music. Again, your favorite musician's favorite musician, your favorite band's favorite band. They pull from that and create things from it. And even the later King Crimson records still were pushing boundaries. So if there's anyone that's like interested in making progressive music, don't steal from King Crimson. Do live the King Crimson lifestyle of throwing everything you know in the trash and building sounds that you've never heard before. But you know what? Maybe you could have a nice beat.
That's a perfect note to end it on, I think.
Don't forget the danceability. Oh my gosh. Let people nod their head. It's not a crime to nod your head. It's not a crime to see your audience nodding their head and dancing a little bit here and there.
All right. Thanks for doing this. I'm really glad you could. Hopefully we can do more episodes in the future. I'd like to do one on Cryptide.
Ooh. Can I plug my band? Can I plug my band?
Yes, yes. And I'm saying we could also do a whole episode plugging your band if you want at some point.
If you've made it this far and you like crazy sounds, My band is called Cryptide. We play surf metal, and the name of the album is Surf Metal. So you can find that on wherever you stream your streams, folks.
Check it out. It's good. It's good stuff. I went to their first show, and it's interesting. It's a cool blend of styles, which I think is the only thing that really makes anything progressive these days. Is we talk a lot on this podcast about progressive versus prog, as prog is like when you hear something that sounds like Dream Theater, that's prog. That's definitely prog. If it sounds like a prog band from 30 years ago, but you just made it, that's prog. But if you want to be progressive, sometimes you have to go against what you think prog is. So hopefully more people do that and get more interesting bands.
I hope so too. Thanks, Matt. This has been great.
Thanks again. All right. And I'm turning it off now.